Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the One Man Huddle. I'm Jason, your host, and today we're going to be talking about all the Sunday games from week 12, talking about, injuries, the results of the game, and where teams stand now. We have a team who's already been eliminated from playoff contention, and we have teams that are fighting for their postseason lives. So, first things first, today we're going to talk about the injuries that happened yesterday, some of the big injuries. I'm not going to talk about every single injury that happened yesterday, just some of the bigger names. The first one, T. Higgins, he went down hard on pass play. He was ruled out pretty quickly with a concussion. That was something I saw happen in real time. He went down very hard. So, we'll see where he stands for next week. I have my doubts that he'll be able to play based on what I saw whenever it happened. Michael Mayer suffered an ankle injury and was ruled out for the rest of the game for the Raiders. So pressure was on Brock Bowers for that game, not being able to have their tight end two out there. Will Campbell was injured for the Patriots and was taken to the locker room on the cart with a knee injury in the second half. That could be a huge blow to their offensive line. He's been great this season so far, so have to keep an eye on that. Alvin Kamara was ruled out in the second half with a knee injury for the Saints. So big blow to their run game and their pass game. Kamara has been a pass catcher for most of his career at this point, even being a running back. He's been fantastic for them. The Eagles suffered multiple injuries on their defense yesterday, including, but not limited to, Reed Blankenship with a thigh injury. I don't believe he returned. Adoree Jackson was checked for a concussion, and Andrew Mukaba was seen in a walking boot on his right foot after the game. He went out and was ruled out at some point in the second half, I'm pretty sure, in that game. I wasn't able to watch every little bit of every game yesterday, unfortunately. Did my research to see what I could figure out on everything. Baker Mayfield was ruled out with a shoulder sprain last night. He does have an MRI scheduled to see the severity of his injury. That was a big blow to the Buccaneers. We'll get to that game later on. Roger McCreary suffered a hip injury and did not return last night, leaving the Rams secondary very thin, pending how severe his injury is. Hopefully, he'll be okay and they'll have him back, along with other players on their defense that they've been missing for part of this season. Obviously, I hope everybody on this list that I mentioned, everybody that I didn't get to or didn't mention, it has an easy recovery for their injuries. I hope everybody will be all right. Having every starter in the league is what's best for the league. That gets us the best football at the end of the day, regardless what you think of those players. Now, more news not dealing with injuries, more of insult to injury at this point. The Raiders fired their offensive coordinator Chip Kelly in the middle of his first season. New offensive coordinator has not been named by Pete Carroll yet, but we'll see what they do down the road. Getting closer to next week, we'll see who takes over play calling for them and whatnot. The Giants also fired a staff member being their defensive coordinator, Shane Bowen, after another fourth quarter collapse for the Giants. This is his second season as defensive coordinator, and they have ranked bottom 3 in defense since he's been there. I think this is the right move. Things did not look like they were getting any better. They did name an interim coach, an interim coordinator, and that's outside linebacker coach Charlie Bolin. So we'll see how they do in these last few games this season to see if their defense is able to make a step up with Bolin at the defensive coordinator position. Now, I made my picks on Friday for the games this week, minus Thursday Night Football. I made my pick for that one on Wednesday. I'll do that again this week. My record for the Sunday games, 10-2. I did pretty well for myself. A lot of games were closer than people expected. We'll start off with the Steelers versus the Bears. DJ Moore came in clutch, 2 touchdown catches to be the catalyst for that offense to really get them in the position that they were in to be able to win that game. Kenneth Gainwell deserved to win for the Steelers. He averaged 9.2 yards per carry on 10 attempts. I don't know why they didn't run the ball with him more. If they had, I think they probably could have went down the field and scored at the end of the game. They had the opportunity. The Bears defense held. and picked up a 3-point win, 31-28. The Steelers defense looked like the bottom six, like I mentioned on Friday. They just did not look good. The Bears defense looked the same way at points. Caleb Williams continues to look good with Ben Johnson. The Bears 8-3, holding the division lead. I'm impressed. I know they haven't played the hardest schedule, but being 8-3 is not easy in the NFL. There's not many teams that are sitting with only 3 losses at this point in the season. So, props to those guys. The next game on the docket, Patriots versus Bengals. Now, at the beginning of this game, I was like, oh man, I may have picked the wrong team because I picked the Patriots. Drake May struggled to start the game, 3 straight drives where they got no points against probably, if not the worst, probably maybe the second, third worst defense in the league. They struggled at the start. He threw a pick 6. It put him down 10-zip. But he bounced back. Started slow. He was able to outduel Joe Flacco. The final score wound up being 26-20. The Patriots' defense was tested, like I mentioned Friday, but it wasn't due to the aerial attack like I thought. It was actually Chase Brown. He exploded this week. Over 100 yards rushing, the most allowed by the Patriots this season by one player. I don't think it'd be the right choice at this point with this result for the Bengals to even put Joe Burrow back in when he's healthy. They're 3-8. They're not making the playoffs. Even if they win out, the chances to make the playoffs are slim because you've got the Steelers and the Ravens ahead of you in your own division to try and win the division. And then just the wild card teams in the AFC right now are 4+ games ahead, and there's only 5 games left of this season. Well, let's see, they're 3-8, so they have 6 games left this season, and they're 4 games plus back to even make the wild card. So we'll see what they inevitably do with Joe Burrow. Maybe they'll throw him in there, and if they lose the first game that he's back, maybe they'll be like, okay, you're sitting for the rest of the season. We'll see. Patriots, with the win, do move back up to the 1 seed in the AFC, and we'll see how they do down the stretch here. They're going to be tested to see just how for real they are. I know they don't have the toughest schedule, but good teams will continue to win. Teams that are not for real, they may fall off here at the end of the season as we get closer to the playoffs. They're a team to keep an eye on. Giants-Lions is the next up. Jahmyr Gibbs is the best player on the Lions, and it's not close. No disrespect to Amon-Ra St. Brown or anybody else on the team. They have a lot of really good players on the team. But Jahmyr Gibbs went for 219 yards on the ground with 2 touchdowns, and on top of that, had 11 catches for 45 yards and another touchdown. So 3 touchdowns, over 250 total yards of offense. Absolute clinic by Jahmyr Gibbs. But you would think with those stats, the Lions dominated this game and probably blew the Giants out, right? Well, you'd be wrong. This game went to overtime. Who would have guessed? Jameis Winston led the Giants in this game. He was their leader. Him with Wan'Dale Robinson, those two clicked like crazy. I don't have his stats pulled up right now, but I'm pretty sure Wan'Dale Robinson finished with over 130 receiving yards in this game, and he just popped off. But, as I mentioned before, they fired their defensive coordinator because they had another fourth quarter collapse. They were winning by 10 points in the fourth quarter, and they lost. Again, I think this is the 5th or 6th game where they've lost a double-digit lead in the fourth quarter and lost the game. Now, that being said, I said a minute ago, Jahmyr Gibbs is the best player on their team, on the Lions team. I want to give a shout out to Amon-Ra St. Brown. I did say no disrespect. He had 9 catches for 149 yards and a touchdown. Awesome game. No disrespect. He played awesome. But I just can't say he's the best player on the team when they have Jahmyr Gibbs putting up insane numbers. He's not doing it every week, but this isn't the first time he's put up crazy numbers like this. I think I saw he's the first player to have 200 plus rushing yards and 10 plus catches in the same game since Tomlinson in like 2002, 2003, something like that. So we'll see. We'll see if they're able to keep the offense going, because Dan Campbell has taken over for the last few weeks, two or three weeks, I believe, on the play calling, and they've looked a little iffy, to say the least. This week they look good on offense. Defense still has some work to do. They have had a lot of injuries this year, so we'll see what they look like down the stretch. And I did mention a team's been eliminated from the playoffs. That would be the Giants. The Giants are officially not going to be playing in this postseason. They will be watching the postseason from the couch, from home. They are the first team out of the playoffs this year. The next game on the docket, the Vikings versus the Packers. Division rivalry. J.J. McCarthy, not the answer for the Vikings. At least not this year. At least not yet. 52 net pass yards, not going to cut it. Not in the NFL. Especially when you have Justin Jefferson on your team. You're just wasting that man's potential. That man has the potential to lead the league in receiving yards. Probably until he's well in his 30s. He is a superstar receiver, and he is being wasted with J.J. McCarthy passing to him. At some point, they either have to let J.J. McCarthy sling it, and he's just going to make mistakes. He's going to overthrow. He's going to underthrow. He's going to miss passes. Or put someone else in at quarterback that you trust to make those passes. These 5-yard passes, these behind-the-line passes, not going to cut it. You got to take shots, and they clearly don't trust him to do it, and I get why, because he's inaccurate even on the short passes sometimes. The medium passes, he's inaccurate. He had 2 picks in this game yesterday. But let's talk about the winning team, Green Bay. They go in to this game knowing they can't afford to lose division games at this point, with the Bears looking like a team that could win their division 8-3. The Packers are like technically a game and a half behind, I think, or a half game depending on how it's scored. I'm really not sure. But they were without Josh Jacobs. They had Emmanuel Wilson. He got his first start in the NFL, and boy, he delivered. Over 100 rushing yards. Put an exclamation point on this team with 2 touchdowns. Jordan Love, he had an alright game. Doesn't seem to be taking way too many shots downfield. Just kind of, taking what the defense gives you, which nothing wrong with that. They did win the game. I think if this was a team that was more fit on the offensive side, talking about the Vikings, this game would have been closer. It was like 23-6 was the final score, something like that. And you got to think, if they turn those 2 interceptions into 2 touchdowns, you're sitting at a 23-20 game. Or if you turn it into a touchdown and a field goal, you're talking 23 to what? That'd be 16, and that's a 1-score game at the end of the game. It's a big difference. Green Bay, I think they need an explosive playmaker to emerge at the end of this season if they want to make a legitimate playoff run. Whether that be that they win the division and make it the playoffs that way, and they may have a home game or 2 at the start. Or if that's a wild card game, if it's a wild card seed and they're playing every game on the road, you're going to have an explosive playmaker, because dinking and dunking down the field is not going to work against every team. It's just not. So we'll see where they sit here in the coming weeks. I don't know what to think of them yet. And the season's almost over. But the next game on the list, the Seahawks versus the Titans. This game was a lot closer than people thought it was going to be, including myself. I can't excuse myself whenever I call out other people saying this game was not going to be close. Jaxon set the franchise record for receiving yards in a season, and he still has 5 more games to play this season. That is crazy. Just crazy. If he can average 130-ish yards per game the rest of the season, he's in the race to break the record for the most receiving yards in a season all time. Period. Insane. He's been on a heater all season. Sam Darnold knows when to look for him. Sam Darnold knows when to pass to him, which, you ask me, all the time, every play. If he's on the field and you're passing the ball, you're looking for JSN. That's just that. The running backs did just enough to balance out the offense for Seattle. Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet did just enough to be able to keep it balanced where they weren't having to pass a crazy amount of times. Uh, I say they essentially escaped with a win when they get in Nashville. The Titans were able to hang around in the second half, and they were an onside kick recovery away from getting the ball back with under a minute to go, down by 6. Cam Ward once again showed he has potential, even with limited weapons on his offense with him, which is he has impressed me this year. He had over 250 yards in the air, and he turned around and he was also the leading rusher. That can't happen though every game. He can't be the leading rusher with 37 yards on the ground. They've got to figure out the run game. I know that starts with the offensive line. I know that they don't have the best offensive line. Obviously, Ward is the most sacked quarterback in the league this season. But they have to figure something out, whether that be going all in on offensive line in the offseason, whether it be trading, signing, or drafting. And they have to get weapons for Cam Ward on the outside with the receivers. I think tight end, they're fine, but we'll see. Shout out to the Titans for not giving up. They fought the whole game. They were down big at one point, and they came back and only lost by 6 points. Shout out to them for not giving up this season. That being said, I'm just going to go ahead and move on to the next game, which I said was going to be game of the week on Friday, Colts versus Chiefs. Kansas City's still alive, man. And they showed it yesterday. Mahomes passed for over 350 yards. And we can't discount the Kansas City defense either here, because they held Jonathan Taylor to 58 yards on the ground, and they absolutely locked down the Indianapolis receivers for the most part all day. They looked good on defense. The Colts had the game in control at the beginning of the game. It was 14-3 at one point early on. They never found the end zone again. They didn't find the end zone in the second half or overtime. This game did go to overtime. Never found the end zone, though. Questions might arise if they start to struggle against teams that have a good defense, like this one yesterday. The Chiefs have a good defense, and the Colts have the Jags breathing down their neck for the division right now. And I know that that's probably sitting with them saying, man, if we had that game yesterday, they'd probably say they all have the division locked up at that point. But they lost, and the Jags, we'll get to that game. We'll get to the Jags game. Kansas City, on the other hand, even with the win, still sit in 10th right now in the AFC playoff picture. Essentially 2 games out of the wild card spot. They can't afford another loss down the stretch here if they want to make the playoffs. And that's just, they're going to have to find that Mahomes magic down the stretch here to not lose another game. And it is Kansas City, so it can happen even with the down season that they've had so far. They could go off on a run here and finish the season 12-5, and everybody's going to say, oh, I don't want to play them in the playoffs, including me with my Broncos. Even though we've already beat them once this year, I don't want to play the Chiefs in the playoffs. Mahomes knows how to get it done when it matters most. That being said, I hope they don't make the playoffs at all. I hope they lose 3 or 4 games here down the stretch somehow, and they don't make the playoffs at all. Now, Jets versus Ravens. Lamar has led the Ravens back to the AFC North lead down the stretch and has them staring down a playoff spot in the top 4 seeds, not even a wild card spot at this point. And their win and the Steelers, coupling that with a loss of their own, find themselves out of the playoff picture. I forgot to mention that, talking about the Steelers-Bears game earlier, but the Steelers are out of the playoff picture. They're in the playoff picture, out of the playoff seeding for now. Now, Derrick Henry didn't have the most productive day, but he did account for the 2 touchdowns that the Ravens did score in this game. It looked like the first half the Ravens weren't even going to get in the end zone at all. They looked terrible on offense in the first half. The turning point, I think, came when Breece Hall fumbled in the red zone, and it was recovered by Baltimore, and all the momentum was with Baltimore for the rest of the game, it felt like, in my opinion at least. The Jets, they didn't get to the end zone after that. They looked okay. That might even be a stretch. In the first half, they were leading going into halftime 7-3, and the final score was 23-10. So obviously, the second half did not go as well for them. I I think it's time to pack it up for the Jets this season. 2-9 record is enough to say, yeah, we're not making the playoffs this year. You're going to have something crazy happen, including racking off 6 straight wins to end the season, and I just don't think that's going to happen. Not with this Jets team. Their depleted defense and their non-existent offense at times. They looked a little bit better with Tyrod Taylor, I will admit. He still didn't look great, though, by any means. So, pack it up, Jets, Ravens. Keep winning. You're on track to get a 3 or 4 seed, probably, in the playoffs. Browns versus Raiders. Admittedly, I must say, did not watch this game except for what was shown on Red Zone. But what I did see on Red Zone was Myles Garrett going insane. Three sacks this week. He's on pace to easily beat the record for the most sacks in a season this year. He has looked unbelievable this year. Shedeur Sanders got his first start for the Browns. He looked all right. He looked decent. He did have a heck of a play towards the beginning of the game where he threw an absolute bomb down the field. I can't remember what receiver it was that got it. Forgive me for that. But even Myles Garrett on the sideline, I'm sure you've seen it if you're online at all at this point and follow football, was just blown away that a Browns quarterback was able to do that. And this is the first time getting to see it while they're sitting on the brink of playoff elimination. I'm sure this week we'll see that, oh, the Browns can be eliminated this week. Maybe not this week, maybe next week, depending on what happens. Anyway, the Raiders are a team that needs to... They have to find a quarterback. They have a lot of rebuilding to do. I'm just going to say that. Pete Carroll has a lot of work to do in this offseason if he wants them to be even close to competitive next year. They look terrible on every side of the ball. I mean, they're going to have to put a lot of work into the defense, obviously, because they've been just terrible. The offense, everybody knows they've been terrible because that's what people watch these days for the most part, is the offense. Yeah, they don't look good. Congratulations on Shedeur getting the win in his first start. Hopefully, for the Browns fans' sakes, he is an answer. I'm not going to say the answer because they have a lot of questions to answer right now. Jaguars versus Cardinals. I think I said it Friday when I was talking about this game that the Jaguars are very inconsistent, and after yesterday, I stand by it. Trevor Lawrence, 3 picks and a lost fumble with 3 touchdowns. That cannot happen again if this team wants to make a run at the division or even a wild card spot, because I think any other team in the league would have beat them, but because it's the Cardinals, they just can't score enough points to win games. I'm fully convinced that that's just a curse that they have. They cannot win because they cannot score enough points. They looked pretty good. The defense looked stellar for most of the game. Obviously 3 picks and a forced fumble that was recovered by the defense. If the Cardinals had a run game to go with Jacoby Brissett, they would have won this game. He had 317 yards in the air, no help from the running backs. Only averaged 2.8 yards per carry. Unacceptable. I know they don't have James Conner, but come on. Something's got to give. Jacoby Brissett's been doing his best to win a game for this team, but it doesn't matter. This team is also another one on the brink of playoff elimination already this season. I think they're 3-8 now as well. So let's move on to a game that was better, in my opinion, from what I saw. Eagles versus Cowboys. The Eagles have to figure this offense out. To go scoreless in the second half against one of the league's worst defenses, unacceptable. Especially with Jalen Hurts, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, and Saquon Barkley on your offense. Not to disrespect any of the players I didn't mention, like Dallas Goedert, also there. They have a pretty awesome offensive line. I don't understand what's happening. Straight up, the Cowboys' offense outplayed the Eagles' offense yesterday. Dak had more yards than Jalen Hurts. Javonte Williams had more yards than Saquon Barkley. George Pickens had more yards than A.J. Brown. That's just fact. That the Cowboys' offense outplayed the Eagles' offense. The Eagles are supposed to have a good defense, and it showed up for the first half. Now the second half, Eagles were up 21-0, and they lost the game 24-21. Unacceptable. I think the biggest turning point in this game was when the Cowboys punted, and Xavier Gipson should have just let the ball bounce. It would have bounced once probably and gone into the end zone. Instead, he takes it at the 2-yard line to return it, and he fumbles in the red zone, and the Cowboys recovered. Now, granted, the Cowboys didn't even score on the drive that ensued after that turnover, but you could feel the momentum shift from that moment that he fumbled and the Cowboys got it for the rest of the game. It felt like the Cowboys were going to win. It didn't matter what happened after that point. It just felt like the Cowboys were going to figure out a way to win. And sure enough, they went down, kicked a field goal to win the game with Brandon Aubrey. The Cowboys are fighting for their lives to make the postseason, and it's possible still. They could still sneak in with a wild card. We'll see what happens at the end of the year. Side note, I think George Pickett's has taken over as wide receiver 1 over CeeDee Lamb. CeeDee Lamb's had some drop problems this year. Just flat out. He's had some drop problems. And Pickens has looked phenomenal. The Cowboys need to pay him big to keep him. He has been fantastic for Dak Prescott and this Cowboys offense. And with the Eagles' loss, that does drop them to the number 2 seed in the NFC after holding the number 1 seed this week. It goes back to the Rams, which we're getting close to getting to their game. We've got a couple games left here. Falcons versus Saints. It wasn't pretty, but the Falcons ended their 5-game losing streak, finally, behind Kirk Cousins, Bijan Robinson, and Darnell Mooney, who stepped up in the absence of Drake London. The Saints just couldn't seem to keep drives alive on offense to match the Falcons. Big factor being Alvin Kamara being out for the second half. I mentioned him earlier when I was going through some of the big injuries. Both teams on the cusp of being eliminated from the playoffs, but both showed they have some fight left. Both of these teams, they both fought hard in this game. I did say it could be a better game than anticipated, and it was okay. It wasn't a great game by any means, but it was competitive for a little bit. I really don't have much to say about this game. Tyler Shuck needs running back help if Alvin Kamara is going to be out, if they want to be more balanced, because he was their leading rusher with 22 yards. That is horrible. Unacceptable. And the last game of Sunday Night Football. Tampa Bay Buccaneers versus the Los Angeles Rams. Nowhere near the shootout that some were expecting. Just didn't happen. It was a blowout. The Rams were in complete control from the opening kickoff until the final whistle. It was never a competition. They were up 31-7 at halftime, behind Matthew Stafford being the league MVP right now. 3 touchdowns, no picks. Davante Adams had 2 of them. I said it. Davante Adams is a touchdown machine. Then there's 2 more. I think he's up to 12 now this season. Baker Mayfield struggled from the start of the game. He's eventually knocked out with that shoulder injury. Teddy Bridgewater comes in. He can't do anything either. And the Bucs just could not do anything on offense last night, period. The Rams defense just absolutely shut them down and showed why they're the best team in the league right now, in front of all of America in prime time. They looked incredible. This team is NFC Championship bound at least, I think. Right now, I would say NFC Championship, if seeding allows, Rams versus Seahawks. I think NFC Championship game. So, let me know what you think. Maybe I said something dumb that you don't agree with. If that's the case, I don't get paid to do this. I'm not an expert by any means. I do this for fun, based off of the research that I do myself. So, if you like it, leave a like, leave a comment, hit that subscribe button, and we'll see you on Wednesday. We're going to talk about the Monday Night Football game that's happening tonight between the 49ers and the Panthers. Ooh, and also want to mention, I'm sure you see right here below me, I have the final scores for everything on the very bottom that has happened, plus the schedule for Monday Night Football. And then above that, I moved my power rankings from the side to the bottom on this little ticker. I did update it a little bit from Sunday to now, so it may change slightly depending on the Monday night game with the 49ers. I think if the 49ers win, they'll probably stay where they're at. If they lose, I may drop them and bring a new team into the top 10. We'll see. Anyway, thanks for watching. We'll see you guys in the next one.